Rep. Tim Kennedy didn't hold back. On the anniversary of the Buffalo mass shooting, he confronted Secretary Kristi Noem over domestic terrorism, budget cuts, and a shocking lack of accountability, demanding she explain these decisions to the families of the victims.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, thank you for your time before this committee. Today is a solemn day for my community in Buffalo, New York. 3 years ago, on May 14th, 2022, a gunman, motivated by racism and hatred, drove 2.5 hours from his home to the east side of Buffalo to carry out an act of domestic terrorism. Equipped with enhanced body armor, a tactical helmet, and a semi-automatic rifle, the gunman opened fire at a local grocery store in a predominantly black community. In just 123 seconds, he took 10 innocent souls that day, severely injured 3, and traumatized countless other individuals. Because of this act of domestic terrorism, radicalized and indoctrinated online, and carried out in the name of white supremacy, families in my community will never be whole again. Buffalo now joins a growing list of communities impacted by mass shootings carried out by lone wolf, homegrown, domestically radicalized, disturbed individuals. Secretary Noem, in your written testimony today, there's not one mention of this kind of threat to the homeland. You refer to foreign terrorist organizations. You refer to aliens who are affiliated with foreign terrorism. You refer to arrests of suspected gang members. Not once do you mention the term domestic terrorism, domestic terrorist, or lone wolf. There's a gaping hole in your testimony today. You fail to reassure this committee or the American people that you'll protect the homeland from bad actors, radicalized right here in the U.S., like the gunman who opened fire on my community 3 years ago today. There's been a systematic, intentional effort by your department and this administration since January 20th to ignore the very real threat posed by domestic terrorism. This is a blatant negligence made abundantly clear by the administration's budget and by President Trump's broader actions to defund the Department of Homeland Security initiatives that track and prevent domestic terrorism. The Trump administration's budget proposal for the Department of Homeland Security completely eliminates the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant Program, a critical DHS program dedicated to helping local communities, including law enforcement, to develop and strengthen efforts to counter attacks of targeted violence and terrorism, just like the racist Buffalo attack. This exact grant program awarded nearly $1 million in the aftermath of the 5/14 shooting in Western New York to help close research gaps about the radicalization of domestic terrorists, develop violence prevention modules, and improve bystander intervention. This program was also used to harden safety and prevention efforts in other communities that experienced targeted domestic terrorism, including a school shooting in Oakland County, Michigan, and a pattern of other domestic terrorist incidents. The budget proposal you're defending today justifies the elimination of this funding by arguing it was, quote, weaponized to target Americans exercising their First Amendment rights, end quote. If the suggestion that an act of domestic terrorism, which took the lives of 10 innocent people and forever changed my community, qualifies as protected First Amendment speech, then explain that to the families of the victims who were killed that day. Under this administration, we have a Department of Homeland Security that is making excuses for domestic terrorists under the guise of free speech and insulting communities like mine, especially on a day like today, as we mark the anniversary of unimaginable violence and loss. We can do better, and we must do better. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama.
This hearing is a stark reminder of the real human consequences behind policy decisions and budget priorities. When Rep. Tim Kennedy addressed Secretary Kristi Noem, he wasn't just asking questions about government programs or funding lines, he was holding a mirror to the moral and practical responsibilities of leadership. Kennedy framed his questions around the Buffalo mass shooting, a tragedy that claimed 10 lives and left a community traumatized. By doing so, he emphasized that domestic terrorism isn't an abstract threat. It is a present, tangible danger that affects families, neighborhoods, and the sense of safety Americans deserve. Kennedy's line of questioning made clear that the administration's failure to explicitly address domestic threats, coupled with the proposed elimination of programs designed to prevent radicalization and targeted violence, represents more than a bureaucratic oversight. It is, in effect, a disregard for the lives and well-being of citizens who rely on the government to protect them. Noem's testimony, which failed to mention domestic terrorism even on the anniversary of the Buffalo tragedy, underscores a critical point. Policy choices communicate priorities. When domestic terrorism prevention is minimized, or when programs like the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant are defunded, it sends a signal about what types of threats the government considers significant. Kennedy highlighted that this grant program had previously awarded nearly $1 million to help communities respond to incidents like the Buffalo shooting, developing strategies for violence prevention, bystander intervention, and safety measures. Eliminating it under the guise of protecting First Amendment rights ignores the distinction between protected speech and acts of targeted violence, undermining public trust and leaving communities vulnerable. This exchange also provides a lesson in civic accountability. Elected officials, congressional representatives, and cabinet members have a duty not only to enforce laws, but to anticipate risks, protect citizens, and respond to tragedies with both empathy and effectiveness. Kennedy's insistence that Noem explain these actions to the families of the victims highlights the moral dimension of policy. Decisions about funding, enforcement, and priorities are never just administrative. They have direct human impact, shaping the difference between safety and exposure to harm, between reassurance and neglect. For viewers, this hearing demonstrates how oversight functions in practice. Congressional questioning is a mechanism for accountability, a way to ensure that leadership does not ignore threats that occur within U.S. borders. It illustrates the importance of maintaining programs and initiatives that track, prevent, and respond to domestic radicalization. It also serves as a reminder that public officials are responsible not just for enforcing the law, but for understanding the social, psychological, and community-level consequences of their actions. Ultimately, this confrontation teaches us that democracy functions best when leaders are held accountable and when citizens demand transparency and action. Domestic terrorism, radicalization, and targeted violence are complex issues that require attention, resources, and moral clarity. Kennedy's questions remind viewers that oversight is not optional. It is essential to preserving life, safety, and justice. The hearing is an educational moment, showing the connection between policy, funding, and the human impact of governance. Left Lens brings clarity to these critical moments, helping viewers see not just what happened in the hearing, but why it matters and how it affects communities and the future of public safety. Stay informed, ask questions, and share this analysis so more people can understand the stakes behind these decisions.